Hello, Dr. Crossan. My name is Chris Fagala. The following video presentation is for class PS 615. For well over 1,000 years, a continuous battle has raged on all in the name of God. What one religious group perceives as God, another religious group begs to differ, and in some cases with their life. The Holy Quran states peace, while the Holy Bible states you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Yet these two messages are still being interpreted the wrong way. Why is it that people could do such horrible acts of violence just because people do not worship the same God that they do, or does something in which is offensive to a group or a person? In this short video response for my paper, I will try to correlate a quick connection between people of radical Islam, which is a group of people that will do whatever it takes to spread Islam throughout the world, and fundamental Christianity, which is a group of people that will try to put an end to what they believe is wrong. Ever since 9/11, when most people living in the United States hear of a bombing or a shooting spree that takes the lives of any amount of innocent civilians, they immediately link this act of terrorism and the person who did that crime as stereotyped as a Muslim with Middle Eastern descent. But when those same citizens find out that this act of violence was caused by a person with a Christian background, they immediately think this person is just crazy and isn't thinking clearly. Two separate terror attacks related by the reason behind their actions come to mind when they purposely killed numerous innocent civilians. The first incident happened on July 22, 2011, when a Christian Norwegian by the name of Anders Behring Breivik went on a shooting spree that took the lives of 77 people because he believed that the Islamic religion was starting to overtake the Christian communities of Norway and nothing was being done about it. The second, a Muslim by the name of Azam Amir Kassab, a lone gunman out of 10 men from Pakistan that survived their shooting spree that took the lives of 166 people in Mumbai, India on November 28, 2008, because they were instilled in the belief that their neighbor India has a bunch of anti-Islamic infidels. Both Breivik and Kassab killed for what they thought was justifiable and in the name of God. I think the real reason behind their action was that they both were duped via propaganda. Propaganda can seem weak in some messages, but for others it is strong and can make people turn to violence. According to Breivik's manifesto in 2002, aged 23 at the time, Breivik writes of traveling to London to meet with a group called the Knights Templar, which was a crusading movement to crush Islamists. No extremist has come forward to admit being in that meeting, though Paul Ray, a founding member of the anti-Islamic English Defense League, admits he may have influenced Breivik's thinking. Breivik secretly plotted his attacks afterwards. Kassab had not held strong Islamic beliefs before he was recruited by the Islamic terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Taiba, or LET for short. A Mumbai policeman told Barney Henderson that in the months after his arrest, he could not recite a single passage from the Quran. His understanding of jihad was flawed and simplistic. In the first police interrogation, he said that the jihad was about killing and getting killed and becoming famous. The leaders of LET had filled him with hate by promising of living out his military fantasies, being seen as a real man in the eyes of his fellow villagers, and providing riches for his family. Kassab said, "It's a very honorable and enduring job. You earn respect, it's a work of God." He was told that their big brother India is so rich and we were dying of poverty and hunger. His father, he says, sells dahi wada, which is a fried lentil and yogurt, in a stall, and they did not have enough food to eat from his earnings. Kassab said that he was promised that once his leaders knew that he was successful in his operation, they would give 150,000 rupees, which is roughly $2,500 US, to his family. Come kill and die after a killing spree. By this one will become famous and will also make Allah proud. Kassab's leaders had told him this. Islam must seem like an absurd religion to non-Muslims. On one hand, it is constantly being portrayed as a religion of peace, and on the other hand, its followers are responsible for the majority of terror attacks around the world. Apologists from Islam emphasize that it is the faith built upon high ethical standards. Upon stress, it is a religion of the law. Islam's dual notion of truth and falsehood further reveal its paradoxical nature. While the Quran is against believers deceiving other believers, for surely God guides not him who is prodigal and a liar. Deception directed at non-Muslims, generally known in Arabic as taqiyya, also has Quranic support and falls within the legal category of things that are permissible for Muslims. Takaya offers two basic uses. The better known revolves around dissembling over one's religious identity when in fear of persecution. This has been the historical usage of Takaya among Shiite communities, when their Sunni rivals have outnumbered and thus threatened them. Conversely, Sunni Muslims far from suffering persecution have, whenever capability allowed, waged jihad against the realm of unbelief, and it is here that they have deployed Takaya, not as dissimulation but as active deceit. In fact, deceit, which is doctrinally grounded in Islam, is often depicted as being equal, sometimes superior to other universal military virtues, such as courage, fortitude, and self-sacrifice. Quran verse 328 is often seen as a primary verse that sanctions deception towards non-Muslims. Let believers, Muslims, not take infidels, the non-Muslims, for friends and allies instead of believers. Whoever does this shall have no relationship left with God, unless you but guard yourself against them, taking precautions. With the ever-increasing presence of predominantly Christian countries' military moving into the Middle East since the 1980s, radical Muslims take all this move as an invasion of their Holy Land and consider it as an act of war. All speeches can be viewed as propaganda if it is based on a person or a group's own opinion. It can only go so far in the United States until it is heard as a direct threat of harm for a cause that a person thinks is morally right or wrong. Propaganda, in my mind, can be viewed as psychological warfare to draw people close to you and make people believe what they want to hear. During the course of years, months, weeks, days, or even seconds, the speaker can even further brainwash the intended interested victim and make them move as if they are a wooden puppet on strings, just like what happened with Breivik and Kassab. Extreme Christian fundamentalism breeds its own kind of violent cells of terrorists right here in the United States. Published in 2001, according to the Abortion Rights League, there have been 2,500 reported attacks and 55,000 acts of illegal disruption against medical clinics since the late 1970s in the United States alone. Radical Islamic groups have killed an estimated 3,252 and injured close to 10,000 people in the United States on 25 separate known occasions where the accused suspects were Muslim trying to kill Christians since 1973, with 2,993 of those deaths and 9,000 injuries coming on September 11, 2001. Around the world, all these numbers coming from these acts of violence are continually, unfortunately, likely to be much higher. With the increasing use of email in the late 1980s and access to cell phones in the early 1990s, the messages that these groups have sent out has spread throughout the world like wildfire. The acts that are produced from this propaganda can then cause a chain reaction of copycats almost instantaneously. If these groups' propaganda are left unchecked, the total number of violent acts will only increase. And this is why I believe it is time that policy needs to be changed in order to prevent it. The United States have been fighting this war on terrorism all wrong. The one way U.S. can win this war and turn the world into a much safer place is if they fight the radical Muslims and fundamental Christians at their own game, and that is by fighting propaganda with propaganda. Perhaps it would be best if the U.S. government enacted laws that deterred or prosecuted those that are participating in terroristic activities to take away their rights before they even start to do any damage. The reason behind this policy is due to people wanting to take the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness away from others. The major way to get a message across for the past 20 years to a person that may have the same beliefs as you, or to make a person come to terms with what the sender believes, is with the use of the internet. And it is with the use of the internet where I also believe current policy needs to be changed. Title 7, Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, states that the government may not target any U.S. person anywhere in the world under its authority, nor may it target a person outside the U.S. if the purpose is to acquire information from a particular known person inside the U.S. But I believe that in order to ensure the safety of all people on foreign and American soil, I believe that certain rights, in particular the First and Fourth Amendment, must be taken away only to prevent another 9/11. If you have nothing to hide, then why complain that the United States government is impeding on your constitutional rights? For those that do complain, it would give probable cause for the NSA to search the phone and internet records of yours and even those close to you. Well, what are you hiding in order to complain? Just as if you were to get pulled over by a police officer and then the police officer asks to search your car and you say no. Why say no if you have nothing to hide? By saying no, the police officer can then get a warrant to go through your phone records and internet records. The internet itself has no concept of illegal boundaries of jurisdiction, and sometimes a physical host is outside the country in which the law is enacted. Law enforcement agencies often find themselves unable to take action against the vast majority of websites which break the laws, even if similar laws exist in the country where a service is hosted. The best that can be done is to notify the local authorities and law enforcement agencies to discourage potential customers of those services while monitoring or filtering the system. Even though internet content filtering programs are unpopular and ineffective, a large number of them, including NetNanny, Covenant, Eyes, and WebSense, are still in place around the world. The recent Australian filtering program, for example, is budgeted to cost as much as $128 million. This is just a small amount to pay if it could prevent a terrorist act that could cost the country billions, even trillions of dollars from going to war. The United States war on terror costs in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Pakistan will reach at least $3.7 trillion. It can go as high as $4.4 trillion, according to a study done by Brown University's Watson's Institute for International Studies. Borrowing the money needed to fight the wars will cost an estimated additional $1 trillion through 2020. Followers of radical Islamic groups such as Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab, and fundamental Christian groups ran by, for example, John Hagee and Tim LaHaye's authority as religious leaders does not come through traditional means. Rather than educational or church positions, their appeal is charismatic in nature and conveyed through their publications and televangelism. Their ability to connect modern events to biblical prophecy in ways that resonate with their audience has grown over time. The undeniable breadth of influence merits further investigation as primary examples of charismatic authority and dispensational evangelism. Again, LaHaye do not simply speak to a defined congregation. Their audience, members in the millions, studying a non-denominational group like dispensationalists, require a method that can elucidate the discursive mechanisms through which a cultural background attains ideological coherence and an appeal that reaches beyond the fundamental subculture. By removing certain broadcasts on television and web pages with keywords on the internet, it might prevent millions of people from becoming brainwashed. There are always those 1%ers that will do something that could take lives, bomb an abortion clinic or embassy because they have opposing views. Americans need to know that they do not have a Fourth Amendment privacy right to shield phone usage records that belong to a third party. And non-Americans outside the U.S. do not have constitutional rights at all to protect them against data collection or eavesdropping. The absence of constitutional protection is not dispositive of any privacy question. It simply means that any additional privacy safeguard must be enacted by Congress, not by bending the Fourth Amendment. In 1999, President Clinton, under considerable cost-cutting pressure from congressional Republicans, and as a peace dividend, the United States Information Agency was sharply defunded 40%, stripped of broadcast functions, and finally merged into the State Department. Most USIA veterans, as well as many diplomats, believe that the decrease ended the agency's effectiveness and muted America's vocal points abroad because state and USIA possessed utterly contradictory cultures. Penn Kimball, who became deputy director of USIA in the year before the merger, stated that the post-Cold War period was a confusing time where the U.S. lacked an overachieving mission. We were reduced in size and vision, putting our desperate brush fires in the Balkans, Africa, and European Union. Kimball stated, "We lost sight of a coherent message, and we even had to curb our tone in order to sound less gloating." And it was a time of fragmentation and uncertainty for the United States, but not for our opponents. Kimball continued saying that the U.S. is still dealing with anti-American ideas in the form of anti-globalism, Islamism, Third Worldism, and the Green Movement, EUism, and the like, all of which was allied to congeal and achieve cohesion. It no longer had a clear strategic vision. The U.S. withdrew from global debate, and the opposition had a clear field. Kimball feels that the United States have no war of ideas, only a war. Propaganda of the deed, not of the word. I agree with Kimball that due to the program being defunded, it in turn caused the wrong messages to filter in the eyes and ears of the would-be attackers of September 11th. Anti-American propaganda is a useful tool to let people vent steam and deflect blame from the state. The reason you are poor, have no freedoms, and don't get anything you want. People are daily told is due not to corrupt, incompetent government, but American misdeeds. The reason why Israel has not been destroyed, the Arab world united, or Islam more properly practices, also blamed on the United States. After decades of official anti-American propaganda in the Arab states, the Obama administration is not likely to change extremist opinion instantly, and American citizens know that they must act now. American propaganda with the promise of food, human care, privileges under international law, opportunity to return to families, etc., in time will turn the tide. Freedom is not free and it comes at a cost. The citizens of the United States need these policies to be funded to ensure a peace. A life can easily be destroyed by a person of any denomination, and it usually starts when they say that their religion is the correct one. You have a freedom of speech as a United States citizen, but what you say will always have its repercussions.